November 30th, 2015 Budget Committee meeting, which is the second session of reviewing the proposed budget for the town. I'd like to start it off with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we are, everyone is here other than Blue Foster and Mike Lang. They both had a funeral to attend tonight, so they will not be here. Other than that, we have Steve Fournier, and we have some department heads here to go through the budget here. So I guess what I would say before we get started, let's approval of the November 23rd, 2015 minutes, which was just last week. So I know we just received them this morning, but can I get a motion to accept the minutes from November 23rd?
Motion to accept the minutes from November 23rd.
Dean, second? Okay. Any revisions that you saw? I mean, I know we've only had a few hours to look at them. I didn't see anything. It actually really, you're getting good at this.
One little typo, but I'll deal with it.
Okay. I didn't see anything at this point, so I read through them before I got here, and I didn't catch anything unless you, okay. All right, all those in favor of accepting the minutes, please say aye.
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 And we had one abstention with Mike. All right, Steve, how would you like to start with who you have here?
This is your meeting.
Okay, so
I don't know where you're going, so let's.
let's just wing it. No,
That's
I'm
what-
kidding. Why don't we just go in order of the budget and just start off with your, whoever's here, let's start with them first.
You want to go with your agenda? We can have the police
Yep,
chief
we'll
come
just
up.
go right with police chief, sir, and
Okay.
just go there and get started.
So we'll do police department. Is
Just get into the page. That should be page 38, I believe.
correct. The bottom line is approved by the town council's $1,322,707, or 1.12% increase. The major increase is to the full-time salaries, which is due to the collective
Collective bargaining.
bargaining agreement. I think everything else is zero except for dues and memberships, which talking $1,000.
Any questions from anyone? I make this really easy on them tonight? Is that the game? So Blue had sent me some questions as well. One of the questions that he had, have we purchased the cameras from last, I know last year when we talked about the budget, has that already been done?
No, it has not.
It has
And
not?
One of the reasons that I have not is because there is some current legislation in front of the state legislature regarding some of the rules and regulations on the cameras. And so I'm kind of waiting to see exactly how that all shakes out, because there are some privacy issues with our state's wiretapping law.
Right.
So we're waiting on the legislation to kind of shake out before we actually purchase them. But I've got till the end of the fiscal year to do that.
Okay.
So.
For the new members, those are body cameras. Okay.
And there were some federal funds available for those as well, weren't there?
Excuse me.
No, not that we qualify for under the grants.
Nothing?
I just want to have one point of clarification. I think that we talked about at the last meeting that there was some safety gear that was requested, and then you were explaining, if I have it correct, Steve, correct me if I'm inaccurate, that was taken out because you wanted them to come up with a proposal under the capital,
Fire.
oh, I'm sorry. Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Hold that thought for.
I will, thank you. Thank you.
And then the only other thing I saw in here that, I mean, it's minimal as far as percent, was just the animal control just seemed to go up pretty substantially this year.
That was to cover the canine.
Okay, that's great. Other than that, it looked pretty solid. Any other questions? You have an easy night. Thanks for coming.
Thanks. I like easy.
We do too.
The next I would go to is Public Works. It's just the next page. Ask the director to come up here. Public Works Administration is the first. It's an increase of 2.44% over last year. I would ask the Public Works Administrator to come up. Yeah. Second time. Its administration is $427,516. This is more the office.
I was gonna say, this was the office and the salary then,
Yeah.
right? Yeah.
Just for clarification, makes it easier for us if we do it page by page. So if you got a question about roadways, wait till we turn the page and get to roadways, okay?
Mm-hmm. Okay, let's return to roadways and sidewalks. There's no
Roadways and
questions.
sidewalks, it's $330,970 as proposed by the town council. It is a reduction of 14.38%. The major areas of reduction, we eliminated the sidewalk construction for this coming year. And that was the major reduction. As for the increase, the council increased asphalt to $155,000 from $125,000 the previous year.
Steve, can you talk a little bit about how we did that? We had transferred 30,000 in from solid waste in order to cover that? I didn't know.
We made a reduction.
Well, I mean, if I didn't
They
say
made a
it
reduction in solid waste, and it's in order to not reduce the bottom line, they felt it was important to increase the amount of money to go into road paving. So they increased it, they reduced it from another department, moved into this department of $30,000.
So there's a 14% reduction really overall, and I know this is kind of becoming the hot button a little bit. I mean, what do we see this becoming? I mean, I know this year we were kind of declining, but I know between the UNH study and things like that, I mean, where do we see this roadway budget going in the future? Is this going to be a bonding thing, or is this going to be we're going to try to continue to pay for it like we've been paying for it?
It should go up. I think the budget, we don't have the plan updated, but I think the paving budget will be somewhere around 250 in the future, if everything goes to plan.
And is that to maintain, or is that to?
It's hard to say.
That would odds are be to maintain.
Yeah.
Okay.
What you're gonna probably, if we have when we get the study back and we have a large amount for reconstruction, I mean, if there are systems that are failing out there, then bonding would be the obvious choice for that one. Please be aware too that when we say $155,000 for paving, there's another fund where we withdraw from as well, which is the motor vehicle registration. When you pay that extra $5, we can withdraw from those funds to maintain the roads as well, and we do use that. So it's not just $155,000 going to paving, there's additional funds. At this point in time, we have not withdrawn from the road reconstruction capital reserve fund, but as soon as the plan comes in, that's where we would also withdraw funds from as well. So there are other funds out there that are doing this, it's not just $155,000 flat.
So, but for clarification, as the department head, it was proposed $345,000, which was brought down to 155, and what's going to, I don't want to say suffer, but what's not going to get done are the sidewalks?
Nope, that's a
What's-
completely different line.
Okay, so what does that reduction mean to what's actually going to get done or not get done?
I was just following the current plan.
Okay.
We have a plan that was done in 2012,
Got it.
and that was the budget from that plan.
Okay.
And my request was to wait till we see the updated plan, see what we actually have to do, not just use because one thing we asked from the plan was, don't give us that we need to do $500,000 or $1 million a year. It's not going to fly.
Right.
Give us a list of roads that if we have a budget of $200,000 to $300,000, what roads can we do?
Got it.
So it's sort of reverse engineering it. This is what we have, this is what can we do, versus say, well, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to spend.
Right, okay.
So,
Isn't that sort of presupposing the outcome? I mean, if the road needs to be paved, it needs to be paved. I would rather know the answer to that question and then decide whether we can afford it or not than tell them, well, here's what we can afford, so
But
trim your list
I
back
I
automatically.
think you misunderstand
to-
what the report's going to have. It's going to be a list of all the roads, their conditions, and what it's going to cost to actually maintain it. So basically, on the flip side is, if we get a budget of $155,000 only, which it's not, I can go with the list with the Public Works Director and say, okay, out of these, what are the top priorities as they prioritize, and what's your top priorities, and how we can put it into the $155,000.
All right, so we've not asked them for a report that says, what can we do for $155,000?
No, we asked them to, the problem is the current reports say, in year one, you need to spend $500,000. In year two, you need to spend $600,000, then it goes down to $200,000. And when it first was written, everyone had sticker shock. Because like, there's no way we can afford that. And so nobody used it as any kind of planning tool, except annually you have the department head coming in with the number that they recommended. So this is actually, we asked them to make it more of a planning tool than just a sticker shock. And they agree. They said, you're not the only town that goes through that, and we want to work with you, so.
How much money is in the other capital reserve fund you were talking
There's
about?
$125,000 currently. We're asking for another $125,000 in the capital reserve fund. In the motor vehicle registration fund,
I don't have a number off the top of my head.
did you find it?
Yep.
We'll get that number ASAP.
Yeah, I don't have that either.
Is there a way to determine how much road we can cover for that amount? So if we're not going to do the 345 that was requested, and you're talking about, once we know the numbers and once we know the roads that are out there, how much distance are we talking?
If you have to do a full reclamation, not just pave the road, grind it up, make it gravel and regrade it, you can do a mile for about 250,000. So it's a mile with full reclamation. If you just go in and shimmer road and do a little overlay, it's about half that cost. It's basically twice the cost if you have to do the reclamation
Right.
to a road.
So just an overlay, this budget would cover about 1.5 miles.
Yeah. Just to give you some kind of
And less
perspective.
than a mile if you had to start from the bottom, okay.
Is there a correlation between oil prices and asphalt prices?
Absolutely.
So asphalt is probably at an all-time low, or not an all-time low, but low within the last decade.
The asphalt, there's only one refinery left that does the mix for asphalt, so they kind of have the fat end of the
Monopolize
stick, you know? There used to be several refineries, now there's one. So the price for asphalt doesn't really follow gasoline and diesel, to be totally honest with you. And obviously, asphalt goes up and goes up and goes up. It kind of went crazy a few years back, 5 years ago. It's kind of leveled off. The increases are kind of holding the line. It's usually within $1 or so. And now there's a different rate for base mix versus top mix and so forth. But it's, it's up there. In 1991, it was $23 a ton, and now it's almost 80. So.
Well, I have a feeling, just like Sean's been talking about the water plant, you'll be talking about roadways for a while.
We used to do $350,000 a year, and that's when the prices were, in the $50 range. Now it's $77 or whatever we're paying in more roads to take care of. And
I know that, I don't think the study's in yet, right?
Not.
So purely speculative, but do we have any kind of a feel for how many miles of road are out there that would make the top 10 list?
For reconstruction versus, top coat,
Reclamation.
Yeah, we're probably like,
Some in the wind, you know.
like,
Yeah.
you know, 45, 50% dial between the two.
The two.
So what, in your mind, is what are the maybe top 2 or 3 priorities for 2016, for this next fiscal year for roadways?
Finish up maybe what we started.
Yeah,
Um,
out on asphalt?
There's a lot of people getting a little irritated with the progress out there.
Yeah.
But there's other roads too, that are in a lot, just as bad a shape. But we got 1 more mile to go out there roughly,
Yeah.
so.
and then after that, you'd probably look at New Road.
New road's a major bike path. People
Yep.
use that to stay off that bridge on 108 and off 108, and New Road's in really rough shape. It's a detour route when we have major incidents on 108, so it's a higher on the list. Those are the things we take into consideration.
And
when
just
we
to
plan.
add, during this time, you're not putting off shimming and top coating other roads. You try to do both, because if you don't, you're just gonna be doing more reconstructions
In the long
in the long
Yeah.
run.
You
So
gotta
you-
maintain.
You're right, so he's gonna be doing some reconstructions, but he also is gonna be maintaining a bunch of the small roads at the same time.
So, Rick, would you just take a guess? I mean, how much mileage are you talking about between what's left to be done on Ash Swamp and the section of New Road that really needs it?
For reclamation, we're looking at, we're up around 18 miles roughly that are gonna need reclamation, in my opinion. You know, we're pushing 52 miles of road that we maintain. We have some summer maintenance, the state, keep in mind, Packus Falls Road, state of New Hampshire does summer maintenance, and half of Grant Road, the DOT does the summer maintenance on that, so.
Let me jump in and give you a dollar amount for the municipal transportation fund. Currently, it has $174,537. The roadway improvement fund has $125,052.
Is that interest?
Yes.
Okay.
454 total.
I was gonna say, it's almost $500,000. All right, that makes me feel a little better.
But with 18
I
miles.
was gonna say, but that's not
How long
even
is
half
New
of what
Road?
we need.
It's almost 3.
And that would probably need a reclamation from end to end.
For all of New Road.
There's no saving that one.
Yeah.
I think the council's feeling is that this goes hand in hand with the plan. As Steve said, there is bonding capability here, and it gets up into that, but we felt like we had enough at the to finish what we've already got going and do some things in the immediate future. But until we have a real clear plan and really set those priorities, not to go further.
Okay. Any other questions?
I have a small one.
Go ahead, Jim.
What's pavement marking?
Pavement
We
marking,
did 126,000 actual in FY15 of asphalt, but only $44 a paint. Because it went up, the budget went up in the proposed 17.
Have you marked the, have you?
that's
painted?
the crosswalks and so forth.
Okay.
That's what that is.
Yeah, pavement mark, like
All the-
lines and,
All right.
probably at the time,
And stuff.
at the end of fiscal year 15, how many did you do?
We were behind.
So, that's
Yeah, you're
probably,
buying, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
The next page, street lighting. 5.95%. Flat fee for lights.
That's just pretty much electricity.
Yeah, the fixtures is if one of the fixtures or the decorative ones get knocked down or something, it's money that we can replace it with. Bridges, 0. So the next page would be buildings and grounds.
1 second on the bridges. What's the 10,000 for that we're not spending, or not budgeting?
We want to install some new guardrails.
It's not a safety issue somewhere?
Not yet, no.
Okay, thank you.
So the next page is buildings and grounds. It's a 3% increase to $482,233. This covers all of the facilities that the town owns, except those covered by the enterprise funds in the library, because that's a separate fund.
The only question that I saw, I think it's account, let me see, 448304, Water Sewer Town Hall. Actual expenditures have been like 11,000, but the budgeting has been like 35 or 4,000 every year. But the last two budgets have been spent around $10,000 or $11,000. Are we just under budgeting that account, or?
We had a water leak in the building.
Okay.
And we chased that down. We figured out what it is.
Okay. That's a big
Water
water
was
leak.
leaking, good lord.
Yeah.
The bathrooms downstairs here really need to be renovated, to be totally honest with you folks. They're antique.
Come on, they're good.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
It's work in progress.
So that was fixed recently?
Well, actually, it's in the, yes, and it's not
It's fixed by
completely
turning
done.
it off.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
good.
It's in the works.
The water's not running
It's
in there
not on.
anymore. Okay.
So,
Any questions?
Oh, I see. Any other questions?
The next is cemeteries. It's a 0.78% increase.
And that's just pretty much salaries, right?
Yeah. And that's full-time salary is shared with, it's a shared position, so.
Okay. Vehicle?
Vehicle maintenance. It's a 4.45% increase of $206,500.
And this is the one where we were saying we have the funds if we were ever to need anything that, like, for equipment or anything.
If
like that.
a piece of equipment had catastrophic failure and it was an insurance claim, yes, the
Okay.
Director of Public Works, or if the fire chief would have money to withdraw from there to buy a piece of equipment, or to lease it. I mean, we're not talking the $500,000 ladder, but we're
Yeah,
talking-
no, I. Okay. Any questions?
Yeah, he's gonna change his hat to fire chief. We got the fire rescue, the next page. It's a 7.35% increase. And yes, this is where your question came in.
So go ahead, Meg, ask it again.
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to make sure that, we had talked about at the last meeting, that the safety equipment would be available for the fire department, and that you would explain that they were going to be making a proposal under the capital funds. request.
I asked the fire department, they've been putting in 42,000 or above annually, and we've been reducing to 25. But they also have a capital reserve fund.
Right.
With a significant amount of money that they haven't withdrawn from for other equipment. So I said, well, if you need equipment, you can also go to that fund and withdraw from there.
Okay.
So that's why there's always that backup there.
Thank you.
What month are the fiscal year 16 actuals current through?
I believe it was September 1.
Yes.
So
Correct.
July, August, September,
Yeah,
the
first quarter.
of the year. What's the thought on budgeting overtime under this? Because we spent 21,000 in fiscal year 15. Looks like we're on pace to spend that much or more in fiscal year 16, but we budgeted 14,000 for it.
The fire department's up 100 calls, 104 calls from a year ago.
Mhm.
It's been extremely busy. The bulk of that is not actual fires, but it's medical. And we try to control it as best we can. They don't come back for callback, but if we're going to lose a medical, they're allowed to come in to cover the call. So on the flip side of that, there's a lot of revenues coming in from the ambulance, so.
Yeah, ambulance revenues, Rick?
Yeah.
Right. I'm not sure that gets to the point that I'm making. Do we think we're actually going to spend 14,000 on overtime in fiscal year 17? Because that would seem to buck the trend.
It's, if we stay real busy, yeah, but it's hard to predict. You're trying to estimate it and be responsible, and it's one of those, you know, we jumped 100 calls and we're only, what are we, well, it's going to be December tomorrow, I guess, so.
What you're asking is whether or not we should inflate that number to 21,000. I would say,
That's, I mean, I just-
I would say no, because you're this is artificially lowering it, you're also be artificially increasing it. Any call that goes above and beyond the hour, we are making money on the other end from the calls. Every call that's an ambulance call is actually making the town funds. So we're budgeting, by budgeting it here, we'd also have to almost be changing on the revenue side as well. So is it an estimate? Yes, but if you don't hit that estimate, then I also have to tax it.
Explain that?
So if I have overtime at 21,000, but my revenue doesn't come in there, I can't change my budget to reduce that on the expense side back to 14. I have to tax at 21,000. But if I only tax at 14, but my revenues come in at 21, that delta goes into fund balance, so we still make a profit off that.
What's the uncollectible rate on billing out ambulance services?
Yeah.
It's climbing.
Yeah.
This
Yeah,
is a
pretty low.
discussion that Rick
But
and
it's
I
still
had.
low.
Yeah, it's still low.
Low being ballpark of what?
We're earning more than what we're paying out at this moment.
Okay. Is that, I mean, I've read a lot of towns have that issue. They bill out lots of ambulance services, but the uncollectible rate is 40,
Yeah, I know,
50%.
yeah. We don't have that issue. I know Exeter had that issue. We are having issues with our current collector, but we're working on that with them. It's not that we're not getting it from the customer, we're not getting it from the collector.
Anything else, guys? All right.
Emergency management. Emergency management is $1,940 flat.
Moving on.
Next will be solid waste, which is page.
Let's say it's 58 or 59. I remember that.
54.
54? Oh.
There is an increase of 0.76%. The town council eliminated spring cleanup this year.
Yeah, so the 30,000 for that went to
When is the
roads
roads?
and sidewalks?
Yep.
That was that was where it
Yep.
came from. Okay.
Yeah, there's 5,000 that came out of supplies,
I believe
2,000 from hazardous waste.
Waste
but
day.
We don't do as much of that either.
Yeah.
I forget the rationale. Yep.
So the household hazardous that we have for like 10,000, if we don't do the spring cleanup, that's still something like at the dump and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's when
Okay.
they collect lead paint,
Yeah,
those
I
kind of
just want to
items.
make sure that that was,
Spring cleanup was the leave at the side of the road and we pick up everything else situation.
Yep.
I'll tell you, when it came back in last year, and we were trying to come up with a policy, everyone listservs were the managers in the state, and I said, we want to re-implement curbside pickup for spring cleanup. And most communities said, don't. Some found that there's a bigger liability now, because people are just putting things on the side of the road that need to be handled differently now than they were 20 years ago. But yeah, we did it pretty cost-effective last year compared to what we did in the past. But it was determined by the council that the money should go into the roads versus spring cleanup this year.
Just to be clear, but the no spring cleanup doesn't just take away the curbside. It takes away bringing a truckload or two of your materials to the dump.
No.
You can still do that.
Oh, yeah.
That's still going to be.
We're
part
just
of
not
it.
picking it up for you.
So you can still make 2 trips.
Absolutely.
In May.
Yep. Well,
Not for free.
Not for free.
Not for
Not
free.
for free. Well, that's,
Right.
okay.
$20
That's
for
what-
that.
right, you can
that's
still
what-
go.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's gonna pay for it.
Yeah. We're not gonna charge, we're gonna charge you, but we can
Right.
still go.
Okay. So it eliminates the quote unquote free.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, which obviously isn't anyway. But so what would the cost be to bring materials in?
We were budgeting 40.
No, so somebody to bring it privately.
Oh, it depends on the load and what the
Yeah.
materials
It's
are.
like $20 for a truckload.
$20
Yeah.
for a truckload. Okay.
And then so much for a refrigerator, so much for a
Yeah.
TV.
Yeah,
So much for a computer.
understood.
And again,
Yeah.
majority, if not all communities have eliminated that curbside spring cleanup.
Yeah.
I mean, other than maybe some brush, but in those situations, you have to go buy the bags and you're paying for it that way.
Yeah.
It's very uncommon to have that.
Steve, what are you budgeting for revenue from the transfer station, offsetting this,
Matt,
basically?
I think it's,
don't think, tell us what it
it's
is.
about 240,000.
All right.
Get you a better number here.
So
We still
Yeah,
subsidize.
50%, give
Yeah.
or take. Okay.
We are not a full enterprise fund with this. If you did, your pay per bag would be much higher, and it would probably be prohibitive, and the system wouldn't work. So we still have to subsidize solid waste collection.
Anything else?
Okay. That is it. Then, we'll go to recreation.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
Thanks, Rick.
First page for recreation is that from the general fund is page 51.
Jim?
Hello.
So how are we doing with our first year with the revolving?
Incredibly. I think 2 more years we'll be doing more incredibly, because we're just, it's really taken off. And we get a couple more amenities, I think, we're going to, in online registration, in 3 years, they're saying that within 2 hours, they were selling camp out in Exeter. Some of the trips we're talking about are going to make us big money. So I'm really excited about it. I think the nice thing about it is that it spreads itself out, so programs like the Halloween Haunt and the Christmas Party and the Easter egg hunt are subsidized by those things, and we can still have those activities and still make enough funds to be able to take care of the things we need to do as far as programs. The programs are making money.
And let me just say too, as I have 2 children that have been using the rec center since we've lived here for, my daughter's 11, we've lived here for most of her life and all of my son's life. And friends of ours that live in surrounding towns are envious of what we have here with with the rec department here in town. So it's really a great thing that you guys are doing. And it's even more fantastic that it actually is a source of revenue for the town on top of that.
Well, thanks
So,
for trusting us and allowing us to be able to do that. We've been talking about it a long time. I'm really excited to be able to see it happen. I did my master thesis on revolving account, and I know it inside out, upside down. I know it. We've got a hybrid, really, in essence. We take programs and we put sponsorships to the programs, and we also take revenues to help with that, and also turn around and be able to look for equipment and look for ways to be able to save. And then, so it's very different than a lot of ones you would see. They would just go after one fund and put it back. It's far bigger than that. We've got some big ideas for lacrosse coming up. We've got a lot of things that are going to be happening that allow us to be able to expand the program. And I don't know if you know, but lacrosse now is the #1 growing next to soccer. And we're seeing it even happening with the high school because they're doing it in gym now. So the nice thing about it is 4 years ago, I had it 3rd and 4th, 5th and 6th, but it stopped. I can see that only growing. Craig and I have been working on this piece, and I think it's going to be a great asset to it. It's going to take us 3 or 4 years, but once that happens, I think we're going to see about 200 more kids that are going to be involved in programs.
But before we get to the programming and revolving fund, the general fund budget is down 4.79%.
That's right.
I want to make sure we stay on the right budget.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah, well, actually, what's happened is by doing
I know.
this,
That's
now he's trying to grab a hold of me.
I'm usually closer now. You go like this.
We're actually decreasing your regular general fund, which is exciting too. I think you're going to be able to see that more too, us to be able to do that. I'm really excited about seeing that happen. And that was another thing that we thought would, but now we know.
And I can tell you, one of the big concerns last year was we did increase the salaries for the senior programs.
Mm-hmm.
And just from my observations, I could tell you that that's paid off. You know, one of my concerns was also creep. Once you give a little more money, they're going to ask for more money, and they've been able to sustain and actually add programming with the current budget they have. So I just want to put kudos in there for as well for the senior programs.
Yeah, Kim's doing a great job with that. We're also looking at programs that we can actually put in a revolving account with that too. So we have programs that they can be subsidized. Many of them are not. They're making money or just even staying even. But eventually that can be moved back too, I believe. But Kim's doing an amazing job. And we're looking at the 55-plus population. It's a huge population that's coming, and that's going to help us.
There's no question of the general fund.
This is a really embarrassing question, and I probably should know this, but, so when you decreased the proposed budget from the department head to the town council, roughly went down, I don't know, 20-something thousand, is that because the facilities, the recreation, am I in the wrong?
No.
Okay, are you following me so far?
Yeah, and I can show you where the money is going to go.
Okay.
What the council did was reduce funds from the general fund and place the funds in the revolving fund.
Okay.
Because they wanted to have the revolving fund pay for through their fees versus it through taxation and try to collect it through there.
Okay.
So when we get to the revolving fund, the council's budget's actually higher than the director's budget.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so that's separate from the capital reserves?
That's a whole different.
Okay,
Yep.
all right, thank you.
Okay, go to the revolving fund.
Revolving fund is 2 pages on.
That was the one account I saw that we actually increased.
We
instead
did,
of
because there was a
decreased.
reduction in the general fund.
Because it was in the general fund that went into here.
Correct.
Got it.
One thing that is in there, and that, Jim was mentioning, increasing programming. Jim and I sat late this summer and said, you know what, we probably could use a splash pad in the community, something that, a lot of communities have started putting in.
Yeah.
So, and this goes into the question about the capital reserve funds.
Yep.
He had it in his capital reserve program, so you're gonna see a large reduction in his request for capital reserve, in the capital reserve contributions. The reason why is, when we sat down, I said, Jim, you've already got the money for it. It's sitting in there. Use it. We don't need to budget it again. So he agreed, and he reduced that figure. That happened with a couple items there. So it's, again, what I mentioned the last time was, when they requested the funds through the CIP, it was all put in, but without withdrawing from the capital reserves that they may already have sitting in there. So that's what they're actually doing. That's why there's a reduction in number of those.
A general question about the splash pad in particular. How does that utilize the water supply, and how may or might not that affect especially in the summer when we're usually on a watch by the middle of June, even with the new well. I'm just wondering how it utilizes the water in general.
It uses water, basically, it uses the same water, but you have some that splashes over.
Sure, but it
there's
basically
always water that's
recycles.
continually being
Yeah.
used and also being kept clean, of course, and through chemicals or, whatever we decide to use. But the nice thing about that is you don't have to worry about a lifeguard, you don't have to worry about any of those things that you do in a pool.
Mm-hmm.
And also, the pool water is a huge amount of water. You're not talking about anywhere near that amount of water.
Right.
I think that it was a brilliant idea for whoever came up with that, because the thing is that a town can afford that.
Yeah.
Kids cool, have a great time to be able to play and have fun, close it down when you want to because it'll be fenced in, and also be able to utilize water and keep allowing it to be filled with.
It's basically a fountain.
It is.
Yeah,
It's a
okay.
recirculating of the water.
So it's okay,
Yeah.
great. And where is that going to be located?
Actually, we're looking at it as the gazebo. If you looked at the gazebo that's out there, it'll be on this side of the gazebo, and the playground will be on the other side. So when you come into the park, you'll actually see it right off. I mean, I think it'll be a great ability to be able to get that ice, And the problem is in day camp, we had no water attraction. We've been trying to think about that. With this now, we have a water attraction. We'll be the best day camp in the state.
So I think you might,
But I'm
sorry, go ahead.
But I'm biased.
So by placing the splash pad in the revolving fund, you're making the statement that it's going to be paid for by camp revenue?
That's correct. Well, partially camp, there'll be other people. We're talking about that, how to look at that. We're looking, maybe we always have sponsors with it. I mean, there's all kinds of ways to look at that.
Here's an odd thing where I wasn't trying to make money on something, and Jim was. Jim was actually, he still is considering charging a fee to use it, where some places don't have fees. And I said, I go, whatever works best, that's fine. But
Get the Blue and Cow to sponsor.
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah, and it would be it wouldn't be a nominal fee. Again, it would be looking, like you said, to pay for the water. If there was extra water, that had to come out to make sure that was going to take care of any wear and tear that you have on it, so that you can have an amenity that's not a tiny fountain. I want to see something that's going to be wow. I'm sure you do too.
and I hope by that point in time, our new well is on.
Yeah,
so we
Yeah.
Talk to Sean in a
the
few
water
minutes.
director. I hope we don't have that issue. But
Well, I do have to say, I mean, with the revolving fund, I'm pleased to see what you guys have done, because I know a few years ago, we were even concerned on what the rec department could do and what the funding was gonna be.
Right.
And to see this now, to be able to turn it into the moneymaker,
And I
that's
have to
great.
give Steve the credit for that, because, I mean, he saw, we have been talking about this, but he was the one that allowed it to happen. It was, if you didn't know a lot about it, and you say, oh my gosh, and the way it runs, it can be it can be issues. But again, I had enough experience in 5 years at school that I knew pretty much it inside out. But just to give you an idea, this is crazy, and this is all I'm gonna say, and then I'm gonna shut up. We made, the first year, 63,000 more than we projected. And we also spent 39,000 less than we projected. And we're gonna do it again.
when I got here, I remember Matt, I went to Matt and I go, what is this? Recreation was in a special fund. To Matt, I go, I know a lot about municipal accounting. What's a special fund? And Matt started laughing. He goes, okay, you figured it out. And so then I brought Jim in. I go, can we just do this a revolving fund? And I go, do you know what? Actually, I did ask him, do you know what a revolving fund is? Me being the new guy, and Jim kind of smirked and said, yeah, I do. And then he explained to me. So then we just went to council. So it's sad that this tool isn't allowed on more things. By state law, we're only allowed to use it on specific items, and recreation's one of them. So.
But that's okay.
Yeah, even camp, I mean, was even based upon thinking about that a long, long time ago. We've been talking about this, and it was hard even with the council talking sometimes, because it's the Walmart of camping. We have big numbers and low costs up front for people. That, it works. It's a Walmart of camping.
Target.
It is.
Target.
Okay, Target, yeah, let's go with Target. But the nice thing about it is
Yeah,
that,
exactly.
so everybody benefits from it, because the thing is that everybody pays, and it works out very, very well. And we do have scholarships, and we do have, those, anybody that falls through the cracks, we can help them doing that. But the thing is that We took that idea actually from Raymond, but I think we've really enhanced it since then. They decided to make some changes and try to do it, and it kind of fell apart. But I kept true to the way it was. Everybody had to pay an X amount, but the amount wasn't a huge amount. You look at a camp like Wildcat, 1 week is the same as us for 7 weeks. 1 week, and we still do well. And the thing is that's the way it should be. It should be that way. A benefit for the taxpayer and a benefit for the user.
I think, Dave, I'll just add on. Go ahead, Jeff.
No, you can, go ahead.
I was just going to add on that I think it was 6 years ago or even 7 years ago that the idea of the rec department being self-funded, in essence, was put into place. And that's a lot of what we're doing here. So the better you do, yeah, we're going to cut the general fund more. But that's not meant to be punitive. It's because
You're self-sustaining.
I really mean that as a compliment. You have done a phenomenal job over there, and being self-sustaining is good, and the enrollment is up, the activities are incredible. So in shifting those funds, that came about through a lot of discussion and good-natured discussion, but I can see that you're excited about that project, and I would expect that your continued enthusiasm will attract not only more campers, but more sponsors.
I think so, too.
Good job.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Jeff?
Speaking of shifting funds, was 25,000 that came out of the general fund, but it looks like only 10 went into the revolving fund. Where'd the other 15 go?
That's going to come out of the overage that we had for the 68,000. We
Oh,
still have
okay.
it sitting there, so
All right.
now we can just take it out of that. I mean, I was willing to give to 25 because I made 60, and probably make more than that even this year, because it's coming up. So that's the nice thing about that. It is sitting in there, and I'd like to build it, but you don't want to build it up to 200,000. It's, a lot of departments have done that in the past. You've gotten themselves in trouble after 8 years because everybody looks at it as this giant apple that's there. We want to be able to have it so that if you had a bad year, you would have that money. But at the same time, to be able to grow the department so that allows us to be able to provide new activities. Not to the point where somebody asked me a question about that. He said, well, when will you stop? I says, well, there is a place where you stop because, you can't do any more. So we just do as much as we can.
And the other thing is, if the fund balance there got too high, even so high that it's to cover losses, you can withdraw from there to purchase capital equipment as well. So it doesn't have to be the capital reserve fund or from town fund balance or taxation. If he needs equipment and he's got a large fund balance, he can withdraw from there as well. And that's earmarked separate from ours.
Is there anywhere in this paperwork that describes the withdrawals like that one?
Like what have we done so far, or?
Like that one that I just asked about? Just because if it's not captured anywhere, it's hard to find.
Yeah, no, it's not, and we'll make sure we do that.
Where's Waldo?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Water and sewer will be
Thanks,
next.
Jim.
Thanks, Jim.
Which are the enterprise funds.
Come up and tell us how we're going to have the water for the splash pad.
And, and the other thing, if there's any questions on capital reserves, would you want to keep the department heads around and do that after?
Do you have questions on capital reserves at this point? Okay.
Probably.
So, just,
Last one.
so, the department heads will be staying longer.
It's fine.
Yeah. As one stands up. Water and sewer. We'll start with water. Which is on page 55, so it's down 1.5%.
And again, just with the water and the sewer, I mean, this is one of those things where the fees and that's what's going to take care of pretty much of the budget. We've
Correct.
been-
They pay for what they
Rate
use.
payers.
Right.
They use.
So the rate users and stuff like that. So as far as this budget, again, this is almost one of those, we kind of anticipated it. We started doing the money ahead of time, so it's kind of paying for itself now. And then it was 2018 or 2019 was the
That's
year.
sewer, not
That's-
water.
That's the sewer. That's
Yeah.
what I thought. Okay.
Water is, I mean, yeah, when you set up an enterprise funds, the revenues have to cover the expenses. And just so people are aware that when we say cover expenses, we get down to the fact that part of my salary comes out of the enterprise funds because I administer the enterprise funds as well as the rest of the town. So we look at every expense that we have in there.
I got nothing for water unless you guys do.
Was there some sort of
I was gonna say, I saw,
transfer from somewhere else, the department head and the town administrator budget for health insurance? Looks like it was increased pretty dramatically by the council.
There was an error.
Okay.
an error in budgeting or error in typo? No, I'm just kidding.
Sure, do you want to explain the error?
Well, there's multiple things going on. The first one is we have, we know that there's some people coming onto the plan. We also budget estimated a 15% increase, and our guaranteed maximum rate came in at, I think, 8.6%. I don't remember what the error exactly was.
But the health insurance was a 48% increase on water.
They miss a person? I think I did.
Someone went from a,
Oh, yeah.
from
Someone
a single plan to a family plan,
Yes.
and that was out of the piece.
Next page, sewer. This is an increase of 6.95%. As I mentioned in my presentation, this is the year of running 2 plants. So that is the major increase in the budget for sewer. We'll be shifting over from the old plant to the new plant, and you just can't do it with a flip of the switch. You always run into problems that way.
Is that a one-year thing-ish?
It's actually, it goes on a schedule, so they looked at a schedule when things are gonna be coming online based on what the contractor has presented them with the schedule. So this is not a full year of operation of 2 plants. It's actually going to increase quite a bit in the following year because the new plant will be totally online and it costs more to run.
Yeah, I thought it was the following year that we saw the big spike.
Yeah, you're gonna see a big spike in the next year as well.
But at some point, we won't be running 2? in the future?
Exactly.
That's what
yes.
I was getting at.
Yes, this will be a first year kind of, this will be the only year for that.
Okay.
That's it. That's all I got.
Just for the contributions to his capital reserves are on this budget as well, they're not in the other. So water and, because again, they're paid by the ratepayers, there's 2 line items on each of their budgets. So if you have questions on capital reserves for him,
The only question I guess I had on the sewer is with us going to 2 plants, do we see salaries or anything like that having to increase with the 2 plants, or are we?
There is an addition to 1 more employee.
Okay, okay.
And then the other thing is that it's a much more complicated plant. Our staff is going to have to get.
Certified in certain.
Yeah, they'll have to get much more certifications to operate it legally.
Okay. Okay, capital reserves, since we have them here, should be page 50, correct?
Yep.
Hold on, so the capital reserve for sewer is back where we just were, right?
are in their budgets, correct?
So for that one, Dan, you reported from the committee that there was 600,000 for Bennett and Sewell pump station and code and life safety improvements of 480,000, 2016-17. Is that still relevant? That was in your email that you sent us from your notes.
For the record, that email needs to be part of the record. If you're going to be following an email that was emailed to a majority of the board, you need to.
I think you might have been on it.
I was, but it has to be, if you're going to make sure there's a file on the, I include it in the minutes, just so nobody's questioning it.
Okay, how do I provide that?
No,
Or do you
we
have
can
it?
do
Okay.
that. I just wanna make
The
sure
reason
that-
I asked is that the department had proposals of 174, but from the notes from the meeting, it was 3-something.
Okay, water's 364,
Oh,
sewer's
okay.
170.
I'm sorry, so I mean water then, not sewer, my fault.
Water.
And Is that the full amount that you asked, 364?
364.
Okay.
Portion of the wells were put in to that. And once that amount reaches, once we reach that amount, then we'll do the project.
Okay. And that's not impacted by the special, I forget what, special request or allocation that we made earlier for the Mac well, right?
That is not part of the MAC well.
I know it's not part of it, but I remember at the time when we had that meeting.
That is not part of that appropriation for the MAC well.
No, I know that, but depleted from the fund. So the depletion for the Mac well that we did, the 800,000.
That's a different fund. The fund we.
Oh, it's a
took-
different fund. Okay.
We
All right,
took
thank
the
you.
money from the MAC well from the water department's surplus.
Okay, all right, so that's not from capital reserve.
It's
All
not
right,
from
because,
capital reserve.
got it, thank you very much.
Okay. Sorry, I misunderstood you.
No, it's actually, I misunderstood something written in the email about the balance, maybe not reflecting that expenditure, but there's a reason why, because it's not the same fund. Makes sense.
Yep. You're good, Sean.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sean.
Contributions to capital reserve funds.
So this really goes back to kind of the discussion we had last week where, excuse me, instead of appropriating more and more to these funds is, are we actually using them to buy the stuff we need before asking for more?
Right.
So this is kind of, okay, we have the money in the account, let's start spending it rather than keep asking for it. Is that in a
Asking for it
nutshell?
Right.
again.
What? Like, asking for it
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
yeah.
For example, Public Works, it was $164,000 proposed. It was reduced to 80, but in the fund currently for that is $570,000. I think what the problem is that when the director of the Public Works comes into the CIP, he says, okay, in year 2000, fiscal year 17, my goal is to do these projects. Well, these projects cost the total of 160, I can't remember, did I switch my spreadsheet? $170,000. But it doesn't take into consideration a withdrawal of half of that or more, or most of that from the capital reserve funds. So it just gets pushed forward as a request to spend $170,000 flat through taxation. So I think that's where we've got the misconnect between the CIP and the withdrawal from the funding of the capital reserve funds.
So when we talked about this last week, you said that based on what you think we will actually do for capital projects in fiscal year ending 17, that the actual balances in the capital reserve funds will come out of that year roughly the same as where they go in? Did I misunderstand what you?
Traditionally, we have. Again, it depends on what kind of projects we're going to be doing this year. I've asked for a building maintenance plan from a group of individuals, the building inspector, the public works director, the buildings and grounds supervisor, and the finance director. That's not going to be exactly what we've been putting in, because we haven't been putting anything in. But that fund has been built up to $273,291, so I think we can do enough without having a serious dent on it. For example, though, police is usually 1-for-1. We take out 46,000, we put in 46,000. It's for a vehicle. If we need another vehicle, this isn't a 2-vehicle. Is this going to be a 2-vehicle year? No. So sometimes you'd have a little different. I'm asking the same for Public Works. You know, if we're starting to withdraw these funds to do I need a report to say, well, what do you need to withdraw, not what do you need to buy.
All right. One of the things that makes this a little challenging from the standpoint of sitting up here is you've identified a need, which is I don't have actual plans from the department heads for what they're going to do, and now
Not all, but some, yeah.
now we're a couple of weeks away from having to vote on this, and so the town is still unclear on exactly what we're going to do because those plans are still being developed.
I think it's safe to say the best plan to follow, if we got everything, you'd buy everything that you wanted in the CIP in that year. We don't know what we're gonna get, so I can't tell you I'm gonna buy everything that's in the CIP that year, because I don't know what you guys are gonna give us. So it has to fluctuate depending on what we end up with in the ultimate budget. By our plan, it would be whatever we can afford through the 180,000 to withdraw for the vehicles that whatever department needs, or for the recreation situation. Originally he was requesting, sorry, two different forms again. Rec was requesting 26,000. We reduced that to 18,666. Partially withdrawing some of it from the current funds. Partially, most of that is going towards a new vehicle. So that's what the difference is there.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is I've kind of got the bad feeling like we're in a situation where we can't help but go past each other, because you're saying, tell me how much I'm going to get and I'll tell you what I'm going to do with it. And we're saying, well, tell us how much you need to do the things you actually need to do.
And I think, the problem you also don't take it, that's not taking consideration is, I could give you a list that has everything we possibly need, and that's what the CIP committee gets.
Mm-hmm.
That's different from what I'm providing you tonight. Or what I provide
that part
you.
I'm completely clear on at this point.
I've got to do the budget,
Mhm.
and I've got to realize what I can get passed by the voters.
Yes.
And so that's why I have to reduce it to where we are and what we actually are going to spend. We don't know everything we're going to withdraw from the capital reserve fund during the year. For dispatch, a lot of that is for replacement in case of failure. So we don't know. We're just trying to build that up when we need to replace items. So we don't have a plan. We don't have a plan for everything yet. I'm asking for that from department heads. Some do, some don't.
It's just the challenge being that, the impression I took away last time, and please tell me if it was incorrect, was when you said, well, in general, I expect to come out of fiscal year 2017 with the same amount in the capital reserve funds as we go in with. The way my simplistic brain interprets that is, well, then the expectation is that we're going to spend the amounts that are listed here. I mean, that math works in my head, so, and then I compare that to the list of things that the department heads wanted to do in 2017, and there's a pretty big gap, and I'm trying to figure out what makes up that gap. What are we not
The
going to do?
$2.9 million already sitting in the capital reserve fund.
Mhm. But you're saying by the end of it, we're still going to have roughly 2.9 million.
We would probably go down, my goal would actually go below the 2.9,
Mhm.
but I need to know exactly what departments want to do. It has to be a specific plan. So, yeah.
Can I give an example?
Please.
All right. For example, Public Works is gonna, we're trying to put away $80,000, okay? He's gonna go out and buy a new snowplow maybe next year. It's gonna be like $170,000. All right, so that means that the fund is gonna go down $100,000, but then again, on the flip side, we're putting away money like $10,000 for revaluation. We're not gonna be spending that money until 5 years from now. We also have the 300th anniversary celebration that we're not spending until, was it?
2027.
So we're putting money aside for things that we know we're going to do. So the overall total of the balance is going to go up for those that are going to be way out in the future. But yeah, we're going to dip into some of them for like snowplows.
I hear you. I'm focusing more on the really big ticket things on here, which, no disrespect to anyone, but the anniversary celebration isn't really one of them.
I understand.
It's more, during CIP, we were told we really need to remodel the second floor of the fire station.
And you and the CIP committee believe that. As part of this process, I did not.
All right, good. This is the kind of thing
That-
that
so
I'm actually wanting to
I cut it
understand
out.
is what specifically.
The process for the CIP is this. Department heads make a request to the CIP committee. and they say,
Plan,
look.
it's a projection.
Projection, and they make a request
Yep.
that says, it's my priority to renovate the second floor of the fire department. Goes to CIP committee. CIP committee says, we agree. We think it's a high priority to renovate the second floor of the fire station. CIP committee makes a recommendation to the town administrator. Town administrator said, I don't believe it's a high priority to renovate the second floor of the fire station at this point in time.
Okay, good. This is.
And the reason
I'm
is
trying to-
I would rather get equipment than renovate the second floor of that. I'm reducing the amount that you requested. That's the process, and I bring that to the town council. The town council, as my budget, not as a CIP. The CIP's done that. It only comes as a budgetary process now. So I'm requesting the amount that's in the budget, and the council says, you know what, we think it's too high, we're gonna reduce it, or we don't think it's high enough, we're gonna increase it. But I think that's the step that people tend to forget is, it's not, what the CIP committee recommends, it's not their budget. It's my budget when it goes to the council. And that's by charter, it's the town administrator's budget. So and that's why you see the reductions everywhere else.
Yeah, no, that's completely understood. I'm just trying to get my head around what it is that was reduced as we went through the various steps of the process.
Because in the CIP committee and the town administrator and the town council needs to take into consideration what all departments are requesting that year.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I can't say, if I've got 3 cruisers that are needed, or a renovation of an upstairs, or even some of the recreation items, I've got to prioritize that myself and say, look, yours doesn't, even though it's a very high priority to you, it's not a high priority in the grand scheme of things. So I have to reduce that. So I think that's the key.
Yeah. I mean, as long as we've got a common understanding
Yeah.
of which levers are being pulled, because,
Yeah.
that's,
Oh, it's not a willy-nilly situation. I go through and I say, look, we can't do that this year. I can't recommend that.
I think that's dovetailing, if I understand what you said, there has been a concern, and Dan, I think you were one of them, in that reducing the amount recommended to be put into capital reserves would somehow automatically mean that certain projects weren't getting done. I think that's the opposite side, okay.
no, Steve's made it really
Because
clear that.
That they are, yeah,
that
okay.
things will get done.
Okay.
I mean, very broad brush, big picture, my concern on capital reserve is when you look at the forecast for the tax rate in 2018 and 2019, are we being short-sighted and setting ourselves up for just sticker shock when those years come? Because
Well, then your tax rate goes up now to avoid later, if that's what you're
do
saying,
we,
that
is
then
it better
it's
to
gotta
have
go up
this,
$2 a
or is it
thousand
better to
now.
level it out? That's a discussion that is, worth having, I think.
And we're okay. I know there's the sticker shock of the 5-year forecast. The items I would say you'd see the sticker shock would be for capital items, roads. If there's major building improvements. Vehicles, those kind of things are pretty much, we've been putting the money aside all
Yeah,
along.
no issues at all with
So
what we've done.
that's
with vehicles.
those are the items I would see for the capital.
Are there any capital reserve funds that you feel, I don't want to use the term underfunded, but is there anything that, that one might kind of make me twitch a little bit if something bad were to happen?
Roads.
Okay. That one's an obvious one.
I know it's an odd one, compensated absences. That's one that, what that is when somebody leaves employment with the town, we use that versus hitting the operating budget to pay them, whatever's owed to them. That would be one that I'd be concerned about.
But you can find it in the operating budget if you need.
My
it,
concern
To
is
some extent.
the boomers are gonna start
Right, right.
retiring.
Mhm.
And it's gonna happen in a flood, not in a trickle. And no, we wouldn't be able to find that big of a
Understood.
chunk in an operating budget. If we had a flood, and it did happen, it happened in 2007 or 8, the retirement system changed what their benefits were, so you saw this flood of people retiring before they lost some benefits. If that happened again, we would have an issue, because we're not at 100% of what our liability is for that.
Do we allow people to roll over vacation time in perpetuity, or
It's not vacation time.
PTO, or whatever the,
It's accumulated sick time.
okay,
And some of it's grandfathered,
all right.
so we've been trying to fix that two ways. One, by putting money aside, and two, changing the personnel policies.
Okay.
So that would be one. You know, some of them I would say I'm concerned about, but I would probably come in, like, I'm concerned about stormwater management and dam capital reserve fund. But odds are, anything we're gonna do to address those is gonna be through bonding. It's gonna be a one-time thing. You're gonna have to we're gonna have to bite the bullet and do it if that's the will of the people. I think putting money aside, the money we're putting aside right now is to come up with a plan to do that. It's not to actually do the project, unless for some miracle, it's really small. We have the money there, but I just can't see that happening.
So you don't have anything specific for the dam or for stormwater that this,
We're not there
this
yet.
amount is pegged
No.
for? It's just
Engineering, we're estimating.
generally,
what
but
we
you
s-
don't know what the
No.
engineering cost could be. Okay.
No,
that
we're
was my
estimating what
question.
we've spent so far, and we're getting estimates from firms at this point.
Any other capital reserves so the chairs can go home? All right. Department heads, thank you.
How's that?
Hi, guys. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Gentlemen.
You're welcome to stay if you like.
How do you want to handle all the other,
All the other?
all the others? I mean, they're, we can,
Go through 'em. See if you can go to some asking questions.
I could just say, you know, we've got town council, no increase, that kind of thing. Or, and you guys could say, stop, I've got a question on that one, or.
I honestly don't have a ton more questions.
Maybe that's the way, is ask if there are there
Are there
questions on other
questions that you guys
departments.
have on any pages rather than go page by page by page? And we
I
have
have
Matt
two.
here too. Jeff, go.
So for page 27, this is employee benefits or human resources.
Yeah.
How come there's no actuals for 15 and 16 for merit?
We changed the system in, the year I got here was 2012. 15, what you see is, when we do a merit increase, we actually have to transfer those funds into the line items with the salaries.
Okay.
So the reason why you see zero is
They're in
because
the
they're
salary.
transferred already the salaries. And that's why usually you'll see an increase in the salary line for each of those, because it's been transferred over there.
It's
Good
just a
answer. Very easy.
budget placeholder.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
No, no problem. That's easy to understand. So then on page 48, this is grants. So I assume Coast is the bus?
Yep.
How does the amount of that grant get calculated? Like, how do we know what to give them? This 20,748 is a very specific number.
Yep, it is actually determined by the number of riders and the number of potential riders within a half a mile from every bus stop in the communities in which they serve.
Okay.
It is as a member of the board of directors of Coast, the formula is I've tried to go through it myself, but that's the figure,
So is it the budget based on projected riders or past riders?
projected.
Okay.
But it's also part of it's also, by that, it's divvied up between Rochester to Portsmouth as well for budgets, so.
So the actual for 15 is the same as the budget, so their projections were perfect.
No, we level funded them.
That's it, that's all I have.
You know, this is a good place to show one, I will say it, just so you're aware. We did eliminate the festival support.
That was my next question.
That is because I've talked to the festival directors and there were no festivals to have. So we eliminated it. This year, we're buying Christmas lights. Oh. Hopefully, I wish the director stayed. They're supposed to be up by Saturday, so. Yeah, the Old Home Day didn't happen, so we didn't provide them with funds. I used it in other areas that were civic promotion.
What is the Hand Tub Association?
I was just going to ask that.
The Hand Tub Association is a group that maintains the Tiger Hose Company. So that little red fire station in the hand tub pumps in there, they maintain that. And we provide them with a contribution of $2,000 a year to do so.
History.
Dave, on 35 is the economic development.
Yes.
In 2015, we budgeted 1,000. We spent 15.
Yes.
I don't have 16. We budgeted 1,000. I don't know what those numbers are now. I don't know if you have them. I'm not sure what year to date they are so far.
16, we haven't expended anything. I'll tell you, in 14, we expended 9,500. The reason is we had consultants assist the Economic Development Committee and the Planning Board with doing a study on best land use for some parcels in the community. The committee has completed their work and the studies have been completed, and they've passed it on to the Planning Board to review, to update the zoning ordinance, to then again respond back to the council to either approve or disapprove. The committee didn't believe that there was going to be a significant amount of consulting work that would need to be done in that budget. So.
And so when the proposed was 10,000 this year, but we reduced it to 2,500.
I made the proposal.
That was just because of history.
He knows more about what's going on in that committee than I do.
Gotcha.
And I did it based upon last year's expenditures.
He said.
And I said, it's the same discussion. I said, look, I know we're not going to have that much.
Yeah, we're not.
So we're going to do the placeholder of 2,500 in case we do need something. And if we do.
Yeah, it seems like we do, though. We're going to need a lot.
If we do.
We've never need less.
Right.
Right?
If that's happened.
100% over. Doesn't, I mean,
Yeah.
if it's 1,000 or 2,500, it still seems like we're off by 6,000 to 8,000.
That's happened 2 years. That was the abnormality.
Yeah.
If it does happen, I usually try to find it somewhere else.
Right.
But I have to.
Right.
We just don't see that. We don't see it there this year. I think what happened last year was that the study wasn't done. There was additional work that needed to be done, so they brought another consultant in to work, so we had to have additional funds. So it wasn't expected. The committee's wrapping up their first charge, as it is.
So where are the somewhere else's that you can find that money, if it's the only line item in that?
I can answer that. There were some other departments that had some savings. Most notably was the tax collector's office. They had, they moved around some positions. They ended up being under budget by a significant amount of money.
Sometimes we do spend less. Sometimes we do spend less. Not always.
The other.
Well, so sorry to interrupt, but
Yeah.
are the consultants hired after we know we have surplus?
No.
It's my job to go find it.
Okay.
We find it, yeah.
You found it. Good job.
For example, well, last year would have been, no pun intended, the perfect storm. We had the consultants, we had some other projects, and then we had the perfect storms. So after January 27th last year, everybody knew, hold the line on your budget as much as possible. Don't do anything until June. And then it was even worse when we got the second blizzard. So we just hold the line and we don't do other projects at that point. We do have to contribute to capital reserve funds. You do have to continue to pay the schools, and you do have to do contractual obligations. So anything else was held up. This year it was sidewalk construction was postponed till later. Roadway pavement was done till late, was postponed till later because we didn't know exactly what we'd have at the end of the year.
So is this part of the plan that
But-
the other department heads are coming up with? Do they, as they sort of suggest their plans, they want to outfit the firehouse, the upstairs of the firehouse we mentioned a couple times? Does the Economic Development Committee say we would like to do another study?
They would normally
After
say
we know
that,
what they
yeah.
is?
We would normally have an idea, okay, we want to just study this. At this point in time, the committee wants to see what the impact of what their last work was. So they're,
That they can do that independently without hiring other consultants?
yeah, we can do that in-house. If not, the $2,500 should cover it. It's not a lot, I mean, it shouldn't be a lot, it's just assisting. Because at this point, what it is proposing changes to the planning board, so it'd be under the planning department.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Dave?
Go ahead, Dave.
Under grants, Richie McFarland, the first line, just, why did we propose 8,700, and then what was the rationale for cutting it back to past years?
What,
I'm sorry, page 49.
social service grants.
Okay, those organizations apply to the town, okay? $8,700 is the amount that they asked for, okay? Basically, I receive all of them, town administrator evaluates them, and then adjusts them accordingly.
Okay. Is that comparable to what they've asked for in past years, or?
In past years, it's only been $2,000, so it's significantly more this year than in previous years.
We have a process for all of these agencies to go through. It's a rather lengthy application, including we need to know how many people in the town that they service. We want to see their financial statements to make sure that they truly are a not-for-profit or a nonprofit entity.
Yeah, you put that in place a couple,
2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago, I
Yeah.
remember that.
Because there was questions on where the funds were, where the funds were going. So we put that in place. Some agencies didn't submit, and we would cut, and I would be vilified because they didn't submit their request, but the rules are the rules are the rules.
So I guess I only have a couple more big picture questions, and I guess
One of them is, obviously, we removed the money from the reserve, capital reserve fund for the well. And I know typically we want to be, I think you said somewhere around 7-8% is kind of where we want to be.
For fund balance.
For fund balance.
Yep.
How do we feel after taking that out for the well? Are we in a good position, or are we?
Two different fund balances.
That's true. The water.
General fund balance is fine, we're about 7 point,
We're a little higher than that.
okay,
We're
It's
about
almost
9.
8.
about 9.
Okay.
No, that was after the last one. Water fund balance,
It's going to be about 500,
500,000,
500,000.
which is percentage-wise
Oh,
where we should be.
yeah, those, both water and sewer are where we should be. Sewer is probably on the higher side, which is part of the plan as we go into the new wastewater treatment facility. Wastewater, we're gonna have to delay some projects because of the amount of money that we withdrew from surplus less.
Water.
Yeah, just water.
No, but
Out of the water fund.
you had said wastewater, we'll have to.
No, I'm sorry.
Water.
Yeah.
Water.
And that's the one that, knock on wood, if we need another well in 2 or 3 years, that's the fund that we would pull it from if we didn't.
We would try
bond.
to first go through bonding. And the only reason why we withdrew was because of the fact that it was an emergency, that
Emergency.
the number came over. If we had to do another well, we'd go through the same process of hiring an engineer, bonding the amount, drilling another well. The only reason why we asked for 800 is because the number was different. We would only use that in that situation.
I mean, I guess the only other question I had, and you know, I watched the meetings with the town council and stuff like that, is it seems like the revenues, the department heads think it might be this, you have your idea it might be this, the town council might think it might be this.
I think
guess-
I'm right, but.
Well, no, it's like, or do you have a bet? No, I guess my question is, if there's an error in that, you know, because I mean, there's, you know, for example, I think there's one of them, the water, it's $12,000 difference. If it doesn't tend to be what the town council maybe thinks it does, then what's the trickle down? No
Yeah.
pun intended.
There are two things that we do. If for some reason revenues became short, well, there's three. The third is the option we don't want to, is you increase taxes.
That's right.
The other two options are we withdraw from fund balance to increase our revenues there, to offset any fluctuation, and then the following year we address it through budget. If the fund balance wasn't there, what we then do is we reduce spending. So we create a a surplus in the fund balance, and then we just cover that loss of revenue there. The only time I saw it really hit recently was 2008, when the interest rates went from, right, like I said, the community I was in at the time, we were getting about $100,000 in interest on investments. It went down to less than 10. And that was a small community. So that would be the situation where you run into if there was a market crash. Other than that, if there was some reason, like if there was motor vehicles didn't meet, we would change the numbers there and probably increase fund balance, so we couldn't withdraw from there. We have enough that we'd be able to do that.
I'm just asking because I know that, like, we've been on a good trend with revenue for the past
Mhm.
couple of years, and if that were to not stay consistent, you know, and I know even some of the budget cuts we did were because the fuel prices were lower and stuff like that. Well, if something happens where that goes back up, how much of a, you know, wiggle room do we have here to where it doesn't then have to go into being taxed?
Yeah, the number one thing that I always keep in mind is that any withdrawal from fund balance or unanticipated revenue should go back to one-time projects. It shouldn't go towards the general operations. So that's why we try to look at a number for the use of fund balance that's similar to what the contribution to the capital reserve funds are. Because you're basically saying, okay, I had surplus here, I'm going to put it in my savings accounts for later. If there was a catastrophic situation and we didn't have that fund balance, or we weren't getting the surplus revenues or excess or reduction in spending in the operating budget, the first place I go to is I reduce the amount for contribution to capital reserve funds, because we don't want to hit operations first. Because, you know, people want to make sure that the things that are operating. I don't see that at this point in time. I know the finance director put some numbers in his 5-year forecast. I just, and we disagree, but I do let him put that in there as his discussion point, but we're not at that point.
We don't want you to say I was right, so.
I think, Matt, though, too, you said you were pretty conservative as far as revenues. You do err on the side of caution there. I don't know that the council had anything to do with, you know, changing anything on the
No.
revenue side or anything like that. We did ask about your projections, and was that okay? Because, to your point, we don't want to hit that. But that also, in my view, is why fund balance is there and why we try to keep that at 8%. Stuff happens, we can only do the best we can 2 years out.
And that was part of my questions on the fund balances and stuff like that, because it's where are we, that if anything were to happen, are we good? And for the most part,
We are
I
good,
feel we are.
And
I
we
feel
have,
are.
and we have bonding, and we have insurance, and we
Right.
have those things, I think they.
We've been very healthy financially for a few years. There were a number of years you would have an extremely healthy fund balance, use a lot of it to reduce the tax rate, and then the following year you have nothing, and so the tax rate goes back up.
Right.
So what we've been doing is consistently withdrawing about $400,000 to $500,000 from fund balance to use for revenue, and it's part of the budget process. We don't do this in October and just pick a number willy-nilly when it comes to trying to set the tax rate. So the tax rate has remained pretty consistent on the town side when it comes to that. And that's what our goal has been, that we've been able to, you know, bar any large projects, we've been able to keep it consistent, just through operations.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, then.
Procedurally. We need to post a budget public hearing for December 14th at 7 PM.
Correct.
This room.
Sure.
I will go through the quick explanation of the budget that I did for you guys at the last meeting. After that, you receive input. That night, you can meet, make changes from the input, or you can vote, accept it, and put it onto the ballot. For us, the town process will be done until January if we were to have any petition warrant articles. So we'd be wrapping up that night.
And as you explained last week, we really only have one warrant article.
There's only one warrant article now for the town side, which I was writing today, and whichever the final figure is here. The only other number that would go in is what if the default budget would be, which is any last year's budget plus any contractual obligations, subtract any one-time expenditures. So Matt's working on that right now.
Okay. So we will have the public hearing on the 14th, and
We'll do it in the same room.
do it in the same room, and hopefully vote on the budget that night and get it posted.
Okay.
Okay? So that's the town, then next Monday on the 7th is for the school. And hopefully, knock on wood, things will go smoothly there too. Right, Mike?
It will.
All right, if you don't have anything else, can I have a motion to adjourn?
Make a motion to adjourn?
I have a second.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Thanks.